Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Grace, Peace, and Balance podcast by Gabi Abdelgadir. This is episode 116, and today I have an incredible guest for you, Dr. Kris Belfry. I will briefly read his bio that he sent me, but he will tell you who he is. Dr. Kris Belfry, ever since he says, ever since a near-death experience in a MVA at age 13, I have wanted to help people. Since then, I have naively wanted to help people, and with my inquisitive mind, I set on that journey. Along the way, I continued to search why some people get better and some don't. It was a realization that so many of the root of our issues stem from our emotional state. Today, I help people on a much deeper level than I did as a chiropractor. As a healer and coach, I specialize in teaching people to resolve chronic health issues by relaxing their nervous system, connecting their mind and body, and releasing old wounds and traumas so that they can heal, they can feel more calm, happier, and better health. I will be sharing his bio both on my podcast and my YouTube channel and his social media links. Please do get in touch with him and connect with him. Ask all the questions you need. Welcome to my podcast, Dr. Kris Belfry.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is
You're
awesome.
welcome. Okay, so you are a chiropractic doctor. That's what I just read.
Yeah, so that's just really by trade. I don't want to confuse people. I don't do chiropractic anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a long journey, but yeah, I kind of really wanted to get deeper into helping people, and chiropractic was part of that journey.
This was part of the journey. Okay, share about the 13-year-old experience you had,
Yeah,
the
so
accident you had. Yeah.
yeah, so my it was my parents' anniversary, so they were going away on a weekend getaway. So my grandmother was taking us to to our family cottage, and along the way we were in an accident, and
Oh, wow.
it was the accident wasn't the scariest part. It was really just that the damage that happened. My parents, or so my the car hit a rock cut. So that's where on the side of the road where the rock's kind of above. We kind of hit that rock, and my forehead hit the seatbelt in front, not the seatbelt, but the back in those cars used to have the ashtrays, and my forehead hit the ashtray, and so I actually looked like the best. Like my sister had terrible wounds from the seatbelt. My grandmother was older, so she had some broken bones. So I thought I was the best out of the deal. But when I got to the hospital, I was moaning and moaning in pain, and they didn't know where this pain was coming from. So I ended up going into emergency surgery, and I'd cut my bowel in 4 places.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
yeah, and in recovery, I wasn't getting better, and they couldn't understand why. And so, um, and my health was deteriorating. And at the time, you just never really questioned doctors. You just did what the doctor says. And my mom was getting nurses were coming in the back and saying, like, secretly saying, like, you need to get your son a second opinion here. Like, there's something wrong here. And but the doctor assured her that this was normal, so they didn't do anything, my mom and dad. And then even uh, what do you call it, not a priest but a female priest, a nun came and was like, we're really worried about your son. I was speaking with the nurses, and you really should do something. And that was the grace of God, and came, and they had a doctor come with a second opinion. And I don't really know the specifics. I can't remember, but there was like moments before I was, going to pass. I had, I guess, an infection. Could go systemic, meaning causing a boatload of issues. So the doctor rushed me, and ended up being fine. And within 5 days, I was out of the hospital and on to repair. But it was really in that moment, I just saw everyone just stepping forward and really wanted me to get better. And I'm like, I love seeing that, and that's really what I wanted to do with my life. And it was in that moment I just realized I wanted to help other people. And I didn't see that myself. It was like other people were sharing that later, as I just had this desire, this quest of like wanting to understand how the body worked, how the body thought, how we think. A lot of maybe boys want to like take a truck apart and put it back together, or a computer. For me, it was the human body that I was really amazed with.
Interested.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, so that led me to go to school, um, and to be a chiropractor. Yep. And it was in chiropractic that I realized that chiropractic can help 75% of the people. And as I kind of mentioned in my bio, I was kind of naive, and I said, I just want to help everybody. Like, I think everybody can heal. And I wanted to be that guy. And I remember people would come and question me, like, why am I? So I started studying all these techniques, and, from chiropractic, acupuncture, energy work. And I remember a doctor, a chiropractor, came to me. He's like, why are you doing all this? I said, look, if I got to go to climb a tree in the top of Africa to find something to help people, that's what I wanted to do. And so that was my journey. So once I graduated from chiropractic school, I was actually waiting. I was going to move to Kentucky to practice, and I went home for Christmas, and I had to wait a couple of months to write an exam. So in that time, I was at home hanging out, and my mom was seeing this guy, and he was really what it is now. I understand it was a form of energy work, but that's not what they call it. Either way, he was doing some really cool stuff. He was helping people with all sorts of things, more than I saw in any of the techniques I'd learned. And I'm like, oh, I want to learn this. And he's like, well, I'll teach it to you. So I stuck around. I put off
Does
my,
this guy have a name?
yeah, his name is Mike Lapointe, but it's actually from a doctor. This is where drama gets in. So I don't really, it's a crazy long story. But the technique actually came from a doctor, Dr. Barbeau out of Quebec. His name was Dr. Barbeau, and his technique was isodynamics. And so that's really what I had learned. But then I started to realize that it had its own flaws, because I had learned so much in my chiropractic and learning all those techniques. So
Yeah.
I ended up creating my own technique, and I started to practice that. And what I really noticed was, like, even with chiropractic, what I didn't like with chiropractic is, people can get better, but they weren't like either getting fully better, or, they'd always have to come back. And I'm like, well, if I'm actually doing my job, then they shouldn't come back. They should be fixed and be good. And in my own personal story, when I was sharing it with before, I used to have an extreme allergy to cats. Like, they touched me, I would get a hive where they touched me. Within minutes of being in the room, I couldn't breathe. And that would create like a misalignment or a subluxation, is what a chiropractor would say. And so I'd get adjusted, and the symptoms would clear as far as like the breathing. I could breathe again. But if I go around another cat, boom, come back. And it's
Same.
this cycle.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, if I was really getting to the root of the problem, why isn't this going away? And so those are my why, quite like, why was this happening? And it really, once I started working on people, I started to get to know people. I started to hear their history. I started to hear, the stories, not just from today, like they hurt their back, but, their past stories.
Yeah.
And I started to realize how some of these stories were impacting their well-being. And so I started to work on that emotional aspect. And, um, and so I started to work on emotions. All of a sudden, people are going and never coming back. I'd see people with allergies not come back. I'd have people with back pain not come back. And I was like, wow, these emotions are really tied to the root of the problem.
Do you do
But
energy work on them?
yeah, so this is what I was doing at the time. So
Okay.
I still do that today, but I really going to transition a dealing. I'll get into that in a second. But
Yeah.
really, because I want to just highlight this aspect of like how the emotions, because I still, people still are coming back. So I don't want people to think, oh my God, because I had those clients. Like, I have clients that come one time. I had one client that came one time, and he must have referred like, I don't know, half his town, like literally 50 people at least came. But the problem was, I mean, it's great and that was amazing, a miracle. But everyone wanted the one shot deal. And And that's not the case. We all have our own stories, our own issues, he came with back pain, and this guy with knee pain wanted to be better in one visit, and this person with shoulder pain that had for 30 years wanted to be better in one visit. So it had its own like issues, right? And so, but that was only key because I'm always learning from these people. So I'm like, why does this guy get better and this one didn't? And another client really was the key that really, there's a few, but this one was really good. He hated his job. He knew to the day when he was going to retire, and he was good too. He referred a lot of people, and he was like, Kris, I referred a lot of people, and some of them never come back. Like, they're great. Their problem's gone. Why do I have to keep coming back like every 4 to 6 weeks? And I knew it was his job, but the stress was constant. Like, every day he's got to go back to work. So it's not like something from the past that I can, work through. This is an ongoing stress.
Yeah.
And, it's funny enough, he's like, Kris, when am I never going to see you? And I told him, I said, when you retire. And he kind of laughed, and, because this was years ago, and this was before really people understood emotions. This was like in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, where, not too many people were talking about how their emotions played a role.
Yes.
So I kind of, I joked around with people and kind of explained a little bit about, but not a lot of people knew that I was working on some emotions because, they weren't ready to, not everyone was ready to hear that, right?
Yeah.
Where their back pain was related to, some childhood abuse, which I would work on. And so, as we continued.
Did you just say back pain could be from child abuse? Because I have severe back pain.
Yes. Not in everybody, but I've had clients where that was some of the problems.
I was beaten, like I got the beating of my life in junior school, even including it. Like high school, it was only once, but I got, and then at home from my mom. So yeah, I got a lot of beating. If it was in Canada, I would be in a shelter right now. The neighbors would have called somebody, or the nuns that used to beat me would have been in prison by now.
Wow.
Yeah, so I do. Maybe that you just said something that really never thought about. So back pain and childhood abuse.
Yeah. It depends on the abuse. And depends on how depends on how you felt in the situation.
Very angry. Yeah.
Yeah, so it could be angry. There's lots of things. Yeah. Anger is lots. I had one lady who was more sexual abuse from an uncle, and she came in for back pain, and her back pain got better. But what she didn't know is I was working on the emotion. And then she later went, and after 30 years or 35 years of never talking to her uncle, yet every summer they had a family reunion and he was there.
Ew. Sorry, I have to say that. I couldn't resist.
Absolutely. But the coolest part of it is, like, once she got rid of the blocks, her back pain went away, but she also felt so much better. She confronted her uncle and, and came to terms with it. It was like, it was a miracle. Yet she never relates it to the treatment. I get it because, but this was a long, long time ago when people, now it would be different. I would talk to him about it and be totally open. But getting back to the one gentleman there. Yeah. So, eventually he retired. And then he stopped coming in. Like, he came in one time, I think he hurt his back in his backyard doing some work. And then, it was sporadic. And then the funny thing is that him and his wife would come in and they would sit there and bicker the whole time in the waiting room, and it was just like constantly like bicker. And then he would come in and complain about the weekend. Like, they went to the cottage and bicker. And then she would complain about him and, and so, but anyways, that went on, and then she retired. And then he started to come in again every 4 to 6 weeks because the new stress is now at home. So that constant bickering where he had this escape of, just evenings with her, he was able to deal with it. So, and so that was like, wow, that kind of led me to like really working on how the emotions play a role, like how this deep-seated stuff, and how now, like, our wives, our job, our situations that are externally are all just gifts to us right now.
Yeah.
right? They're just signals. They're communicating to us. Our body's telling us, oh,
Yeah.
there's something we need to listen to in our bodies. It's like there's something we need to get rid of. It's just a gift that our body's trying to tell us something to let go
Tell
of.
us something. Yeah, always. Like I think we
Right.
gotta listen to our body, that I have learned. Yeah. And
Right.
then that have you studied or do you use NLP?
Yep. So I use NLP. Um, I specifically use like an anchoring technique, but that's my main one. So what I really do, it's mostly all anchoring. I teach people to anchor their breath to relax their nervous system. So that's really what I do now. So I shift from, I still see people in person and I do the work, but I really want to empower people to heal themselves. Then they don't have to see me. They can do it themselves. I give them the tools. So I teach people now to relax their nervous system. And why? So that way they can connect and listen to what's going on in their heads. We're so busy. TV, video games, Netflix, jobs, and then we try to, we push that away with alcohol or drugs or, you know, porn or sex or our work. We try to distract that busy mind. I tell people, like, let's calm your nervous system and listen. What is it telling us? And so I teach them to notice their triggers, our emotions. They're all just gifts. I tell people anger is a gift. Why is it a gift? Because it tells you that there's something that needs to clear in your body.
Yeah.
But until you recognize, like, where is it? You have to, and I teach people how to connect that. And so once you kind of get that, it's like hide and go seek. It's just got to find it, and then your body will release it through a process that I teach people to do. And it's just online. It's all mindfulness. And there's some exercise that I give and some practice and some tools that I give people as well to help them work through their stuff.
Okay, that's incredible. So you use energy work, NLP, a combination of everything. And then do you use chiropractor? Do you practice chiropractor on some
No,
of them,
so
like with the shoulder pain or back pain?
no, so I
No?
don't see people in person anymore. Well, I
Oh,
mean,
you
I do,
don't?
but when I see people online that come who want to learn how to work on themselves,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't see them in person. So if they have
So
shoulder
it's all
pain,
online.
the shoulder pain is a gift. So what's that shoulder pain telling you? I had neck pain one day, and I've been doing this a long time. The chiropractic part was I know where some points are. Acupuncture, I know where some points are to eliminate pain. And I'd woken up with neck pain, so I thought, oh, I just slept funny. Well, I rubbed the points and did the things that normally would go away if it's a physical thing. Well, nothing changed. So I'm like, what's going on? So I did my practice, and in that practice, I realized it was some emotional stuff related to my mom. My mom, my parents usually go to Mexico for the winter, but my mom, with COVID and everything, my mom chose, and I asked her to help my daughter online schooling. I didn't have time to work and teach my daughter, so my mom said she will help her till November. So she stayed, but that was an adjustment. Now she's in my house, 24/7, 7 days a week. As a grown man, that was an adjustment for me, because having her in your space, and I realized that I just had to work through that and set some boundaries around my mom, around the space. It's not that I didn't want her there. I loved her and I'm grateful that she came, but there was just some things that were bothering me that I didn't share. And once I cleared that, it allowed me to open up and share that, because there could be some fear of, like, how could you? It's your mom, and things you don't want to say. But once I said it, she was great, and everything was perfect after that.
Yeah, and then I think what happens is, when one thing I learned from my own mom is, when they get older, they become more sensitive. They complain a lot. Nothing really pleases them. At least that's what I experienced with my mom. And she was not that old, but all of a sudden, the last 5 years of her life, she started remembering stuff from her childhood.
Right.
Which gave me a reason, I think it was a relief that she told me the last time I saw her before she passed, how she was punished as a child. And then I was in a plane one day started to think that the type of beating that I got from her, where it came from, because that is the way she grew up.
Right.
So that's my grandma apparently was a tough cookie as well. So, but that was how punishment was those days, right? But it was way too much, you know?
Right.
And then they when they get older, I have seen it also with my friends and all that, they tell the same story over and over. There is the little forgetfulness comes in, very sensitive. They complain about everything. They're not grateful for whatever you do for them. I think not all of them could be like that, but I have seen that happen as they get older. So they need a lot of patience, I guess.
Right. Well, because if you know, and that's very true, and there's different levels of that. I mean, sometimes I see with complaints, there's usually a complaint. Is there something underneath that? You know, and so it's kind of like, let's explore what's underneath that. So what they're telling you, we always think that that's at face value, like, oh, my house is dirty. Well, it's usually something below that. There's something that's missing. You know, maybe they don't feel heard, they don't feel seen. It could be like, you know, they just need
Attention. Oh
attention.
my God, yes.
Right.
That is huge.
Right.
Attention is huge when people get older. Yeah.
Right. And so that's you know, and that's why, you know, people I talk to sometimes, you know, when I work with some clients, some people don't want to get better, and they'll come and say, oh yeah, I do. And as I start to navigate a conversation with them, I realize, you know,
They're
their
not ready.
pain is a part of their life, and they use their pain for attention. As a child, kids use negative attention, so, or like negative behavior for attention. Well, adults, you can't really act out that way, so often pain becomes that. And so, you know, I use my intuitive ability sometimes in some of these clients to, you know, find, you know, hey, this is what we have to work through. Are you ready to work through that? And some aren't, you know, but you know, if you really want to get better, well, that's what you have to do. And so some may not work with me, or some I choose not to, because they, you know, they don't want to really be better.
Yeah,
right. It's,
I guess, yeah.
and this isn't therapy. You know what I do? You don't have to review your whole life history. And I partly why I think therapy doesn't work, because it's just talking about, and you're only going to be talking about what you're comfortable in your box. And so it's similar with these people. Like, if you don't do anything with your past luggage, so you're carrying that along. Now you're like 10 years, 30 years, 50 years, 60 years. You're carrying your stuff from your childhood you never dealt with.
Yeah.
And if it's, and when I talk about a trauma, it doesn't have to be abuse. It doesn't have like physical or emotional or mental abuse, you know. It could have been your parents separated, and that was a big deal for you. It could have been like, I've had clients where like they've had a younger brother, and that was like, oh, I'm not good enough. My parents had to have another child. You know, I share stories like, you wanted a red bike and you got a blue bike. It wasn't a big deal, but you know, at 6 years old, it was a big deal. One of my biggest trauma, you know, was my parents used to tease me that they found me under a damp rock. And I had a ton of
Yeah.
unlovable.
Oh my God, join the club, because my mom and my brother used to tell me they found me in a garbage bin.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was sensitive. And I remember I ran away from home more than once, and my parents thought it was funny. So they, you know, they continued the story. And I felt this, I had this huge issue with rejection that carried my life. And, you know, I've been in personal development for a long time. So I'd even used, you know, I watched The Secret. I had made The Secret like a great way to hide, package my fear of rejection. You know, a perfect example would be a woman. Like, I made this list of like, you know, Barbie doll, like, you know, the list was ridiculous, you know, like they couldn't have any children. They had to, like, the looks was like a 10 out of 10. I mean, probably 12 out of 10, you know, they couldn't, like, you know, cats was an issue at the time. So they can't have any cats. For whatever reason, I thought horses was just ridiculous to want to like horses, expensive, time consuming. Anyone who liked horses is out, you know. And I lived in Sudbury, so normal to have horses for some people. And so, you know, I started dating people, and it'd be like, oh, you have cats? Oh, done talking to her. Like, I met a perfect, like a beautiful woman. I mean, You know, she had a great job. She was intelligent. I mean, we were like-minded. And she's like, oh, and I love horses. I got my own horse, I got a stable. I live out in the country. And that was that's the last thing I remember about our conversation because I tuned her out. I'm like, oh, she's not off my list, right? Because it's just like,
Yeah.
you know, I had covered it so bad. And so even if I dated a girl, they pretty much had to like bang me over the head with a stick and drag me to the cave to make it obvious that they were interested. And then I would date them for about 3 months and either like, you know, I acted like a total jerk, so they would dump me, or I just was kind of ignored them, that I just kind of like severed, just because I was afraid of that rejection. To business, people would unsubscribe from my email list. I would feel that in my body. I would be hurt. Like, how could they do that? Like, do they not like my emails? Is it something I wrote about? And so then I would go back and check what they read, and I made it about me, and it was that fear, right? Like, well, how could they reject me? And to the point where, like, I'd just finished school. I was starting this whole new practice, and I had to hire someone because I was afraid to collect money or even rebook somebody because in case they said no, like they didn't want to come back. I mean, that would be
Oh
the
my
biggest
goodness. Yeah.
pain. And there was those people. And sometimes, and a lot of those times too, like it would be because they were feeling better and they didn't need to come back. But I didn't know that. I just took it like, oh, I must not have done a good enough job. I wasn't good
Oh,
enough, and
yeah.
it was just this, and the biggest, craziest thing is it wasn't until, my wife and my ex-wife now had separated that I realized, I'm like, oh my God, this was the biggest gift. I realized that was the biggest rejection I could have experienced. And, but that was the key for me to realize how I reject,
You can accept the change.
because I had to be aware of it. But then I started to use the technique I learned to work through all that stuff because I wouldn't have been able to share this with you out of embarrassment, or, our story would have gotten in the head. Heck, I probably wouldn't even met you because I would have been too in my head about you judging me to, or not accept me. Even when I was dating, it'd be like, I wouldn't even, swipe or talk to a total stranger woman, but just in case she would reject me. It was just like, well, how am I ever going to meet someone? It was just like, I look back at like how absurd I allowed this to go on. And that's part of what, getting a coach is about, is finding these blind spots. Cause I didn't know that. And,
Did you have coaches? Did you have to hire a coach?
yeah, I mean, I hired, I hired a men's coach through the separation. But I've always been in workshops. I've always been in trainings. I've always been doing that. But the whole,
Anybody from the movie The Secret at all? Did you join
no,
any of their classes
oh
or
yes,
their
this,
seminar?
yes, yeah. So I did. What was this? John
Asaraf.
Asraf, yeah,
Yeah.
and the other guy there that he had
Dr.
that.
Bernard? Which
No, he
one?
had that problem with people that died in their
Oh my goodness
sauna.
gracious. Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my God. I can't even remember his name.
yeah, either.
He suffocated them, but
Yeah,
it was supposed to
right,
be a practice which ended. And the mistake he did was, instead of staying when people died, he took the
right,
first plane out and ran away from it. He
right.
was in prison, eh?
Yeah,
But still, there were people who still believed in him, and he
yeah,
healed them and all that, even when he was in prison.
right. Oh, I did
Yeah.
the millionaire mind. What is the name there? T.R. Veckard. I did his.
Yeah, oh, I love, but
Yeah.
Hacker was not in The Secret. Yeah, but I
Wasn't,
like him. I
yeah.
like him. Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, and a friend, mutual friend, Steve, he did Bob Proctor. And so me and him were really close. So I did connect a lot with like what he learned from Bob and stuff too.
Yeah, he was my very first mentor. May he rest in peace, Bob
Oh,
Proctor.
wow.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did his 13-month coaching program,
Okay. Yeah.
and then I
Amazing.
attended his 6-day The Matrix seminar live.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I did another 4.5 months different training with him and 3 others, followed by 2.5 days in Los Angeles. So I did. He was my very first mentor. Yeah, and I
Wow.
have done with John Assaraf, and I have done. Obviously, you know that I'm certified by Jack Canfield.
Uh-huh.
And the only person, my biggest regret that I haven't seen when I was in Los Angeles is Dr. Bernard, you know, the black guy with dreads. He's cut his hair short
Oh,
now.
yes, yes, yeah.
His
Yeah.
name is Bernard. He has a huge church in LA.
Oh,
And
wow.
I used to go quite often, and especially the time we were there for 4 months, I never got the chance to go to his church.
Oh, my. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
but
was.
I really like that guy as well, right? He's so good. His story is incredible.
Yeah, I there was something. I'm not sure what, like, the secret, like, didn't like. It didn't hit me
The,
on that level, I guess. I was too, like, looking at my story, I was too more into, like, you know, about the why about people, and my own not being good enough to keep learning more techniques.
yeah,
So a lot of my time was learning technique after technique to be better and better because of my own, person that got
issues.
better, but in my own fear of rejection that he didn't get better. So, I was like, I figured if I was like this amazing guy can get everybody better, then the money would come and I didn't have to ever
Yeah.
worry about that
Yeah. And then we
side
learned
of it.
about the
Yeah.
law of attraction, right? That's
Right.
when we really
Right.
became aware of the law of attraction, that we have to watch our thoughts. Like, we have to think positive, we have to be consistent, because the more negative you think, the more whatever we think with
Right.
emotion, we attract. So that's how
Right.
we learn. If that movie or that book hadn't come out, still people, I don't know, there are a lot of people who did though before, right? As a man thinks, so is he.
Yeah.
That was a very old book that Bob Proctor suggested we read it when we did the coaching program.
Which one,
Uh,
sir?
as a man thinketh.
Oh,
I'm
man,
gonna
think
write,
of, yeah.
yeah,
Yes, I've seen that one.
that,
That was a
yeah,
great book. Yeah.
yeah, that was one of the first books he recommended we read, and then followed, obviously, he was obsessed by Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
And then Think and Grow Rich, and a lot of other books, The Power of Intention, The
Yeah.
Science of Getting Rich. Oh my God, I love that book, and I love that he's got a whole training about the science of getting rich.
Okay.
Absolutely incredible. That book needs reading again. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, there are books that are worth going back even after 1 year or 2 years. What book changed your life? Before we end up, I have a couple more
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. There, really, there's so many different times in my life, early on, The Man Who Sold His Ferrari was really,
Oh my God, I love that book. Oh my
yeah.
goodness, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and then there was
That was Robin Sharma, right? Yeah,
Robin
it's been
Sharma.
a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There was those what's his Michael Singer's books. Those were really impactful. What was his Untethered Living? No, that's his newest book, Living Untethered. The Journey of the Souls, I think, was one. I think Journey of the Souls. It's like he tells a story of his life. Just did this van trip, and it's really remarkable about how he created, like, think about like what he thought about, he created, like, just it would just show up for him. Like, he created his own ashram in the middle of the woods, and he's like, he needed more land, and they just like, well, like, it's too much money, just like all this thing would come to him, and he had a job, and he's like, well, I don't really want to work. It was just like this whole thought of just kind of putting it on the universe, just like
Expansion, yeah.
exactly how we're like, you learn, and taking maybe the law of attraction to another level, put in the practice. And that's how I always learned of like how other people did it, rather than just like from that story side. That's why
Yeah.
that's why I loved like going to retreats or workshops where you in group settings, because I learned so much from other people's stories.
Oh, I
Like,
love
listen,
group settings. And I'm
right,
going, by the way, I'm going for CLA in October.
that's
Are you
amazing.
gonna do it? You're
um
thinking about it?
yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, for sure, definitely
Yeah,
gonna think about
yeah.
it. Yeah.
This would be my first trip like in 4 years. I haven't been in what are we? COVID is 3 years. Yeah, 4 years I haven't been in a plane. And I
Wow.
have huge family in Maryland, so I'm gonna go for the 3 days for
Oh, wow.
CLA,
Yeah,
and
nice.
then move to my family, at least spend a few days with them before I get back. Yeah, so I can't wait to
Yeah,
meet everybody, hug everybody. Think about
amazing.
it. Yeah, it would be
Yeah,
nice to
absolutely.
meet everybody in person.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just new to the group. I'm just trying to meet everybody and get a
Yes, yes. Do
feel,
your
right? So
coffee,
yeah,
Zoom meetings and all that.
yeah,
Get to know people. There are a lot of good people. There are quite a few amazing Canadians as well.
I know. I've met a
Yeah,
few. Yeah,
yeah. There are Don and there is Gordon. There is
I
Al
met
Karim
Gordon.
Shatour.
Yeah,
Yeah, Al Karim Shatour. He is very spiritual, so he could also be very. All of them actually, they're very spiritual. So, and there is Marianne, and there is who else? Gabby in Canada. There are quite a few new ones that I
yeah,
haven't done coffee with. There are, I
yeah.
think, a couple more Canadians that I haven't.
I want to mention a few more books too, because I really, and
Yeah.
like through my separation, I was really big, and I really kind of got to a plane of like, I thought I knew energy. I've been doing energy work in by next year it'll be 20 years. I can't believe it.
Mhm.
And I thought I knew everything about energy work, at least not everything, but so much. And through this separation, I realized there's a difference between a masculine energy and a feminine energy, and it's not
Yeah.
about our gender. And that
Mhm.
took me to a whole new level in how we think. And so for me, The Way of the Superior Man by David Data was really big, and um, the masculine in relationships was really big for me. And that's
I don't know those books, so I haven't read that
yeah,
one.
that's probably for your male audience. The
Mhm.
counterpart for the female, which I read as well, just to understand where the women side comes from, was Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong, and that was a really good book
Mhm.
too.
Okay.
Just to kind of for women to understand how men think, because everyone goes to like men are from Mars, women are from Venus, but this is takes
Yeah.
you to different levels. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like a very old book that I got, like I read like God knows when, years and years ago. Men
Which
Are
one?
From Mars.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
right.
that one.
Yeah,
It's a very old book. I think people
right.
love it.
Yeah,
It didn't resonate with me
yeah,
personally, but I think people did love that book. It didn't make, I don't know, I didn't feel any connection with that book,
yeah.
like,
The,
but it was, people loved it. Yeah.
yeah, it kind of gives it's kind of a surface level, but it has helped me to understand women better and men better. Like, how men act and how women act are different, and how we think are different, and you know, it's a bit loosely genderizing here a bit, but uh yeah, it's been those books were big. And obviously the body keeps score from an emotional standpoint of understanding how our body holds on to anything. Dr. Sarno books on back pain and how the somatovisceral or visceral somatic issues, meaning like pain from your organs and pain from emotions, cause like how it's connected to the nervous system,
Mhm.
were also pretty cool books that I've read.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I am focused more on spiritual books right now. Anything spiritual, like the Dr. Wayne Dyers, the Louise Hayes,
Yeah.
the
Yeah. You would
yeah,
love them. Michael Singer. It's really
yeah,
good.
living. And I saw this. I don't know who showed
Yeah.
me. I
Yeah.
think it must have been at work that I saw this book.
Yeah, that's a really
Yeah, can
he's
you?
extremely spiritual.
Yeah, remind me
Yeah.
on Messenger because I need a
Yeah.
copy. Yeah,
Yeah.
because this is not the first time somebody shows me. I don't have it.
Okay.
So yeah.
I
So yeah.
usually mark books where like I find like amazing things, and you can see like
Yeah,
I
I
probably
know.
normally I have like maybe 10 like aha moments, and there's got to be about 30. That's how
Oh my,
many.
that's how good it is. Oh
Yeah.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jose does that as well. Jose always is like highlighting his stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. Like I put yellow stickies if I
Yeah.
want to repeat something, but I also have a habit of every 2 years repeating one book that somehow helped me change my life in any
Right.
way. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a repetition is good sometimes. There are goods that are books that are keepers for life, right?
Right. That's
Yeah.
this. And normally, if it's just like maybe a line or a paragraph, I write in a book. And so I read that book. Instead of reading the whole book again, I'll read like my highlighted section I write in my own little journal. And so
Mhm.
I'll read the highlighted parts of the book. But there was so many like where I had like 2 pages of reading. I'm like, wow, that was a really good book. And I mean, I read a fairly number of books, and yeah, it was a big one
Yeah,
for me.
I just
You'd like it.
donated, I think it was last year 2021 summer, I donated 430 books to Value Village.
Wow.
And I have about maybe 400 at home, but these
Yeah.
ones are keepers.
Yeah.
And I have boxes of books in my brother-in-law's basement because I live in a not in a house.
Yeah.
So I have boxes of books that I need to go back and review what they are. But yeah, but
So
that's
this is
how addicted I am to books.
okay. So here's this is what I do. So like me too. I when I separated, you know, I gave away after already giving away a ton of books. You know, she kept books, I kept books. We gave away maybe at least 100 books. What I started doing was taking them out of the library.
Oh, yeah.
And so I go to the library. And so this Living Untethered, I got it from the library and I read the first like 3 chapters. And I'm like, oh, I got to get this. It was so good. I'm like, I got to buy this book because it's a keeper.
Okay, that's a good thing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I find like that's what I do now. I just sign books. If I can't get them from the library, I'll buy them. And if not, I'll just sign them out at the library. If it's that good, I go buy it.
I tried to do that.
Yeah.
Like I got a book. I went to the library and I wanted to get a book called A Happy Pocket Full of Money. Apparently, it has changed a lot of people financially, that book. Anyway,
Okay.
so I said, okay, I gotta get it from my mastermind group. I gotta get that. So I decided to go to the library, get a copy because I don't like those extremely tiny fonts and things like that. And I wanted to see. And then I go to the library. They tell me you have 36 people waiting for that book before you.
Oh, wow.
36 people waiting to get that book.
That's how good it is.
Has to be.
Right.
Yeah, so I ended up getting an ebook and I have it on my tablet, which I haven't touched yet, but but I want to read it on my tablet first. And if I
gotta write that. Remind me of that one too. I gotta check it out.
I will message it to you. I'll message it to you. So
Another good one too with Happy Pocket was Busting Loose from the Money Game.
Oh yeah, I love that book. Yeah,
Busting
Loose from the Money Game. Yeah, that is a good book as well. Okay, so I think we are way over time. And then so what is your last, I know we could talk more, but what is your advice to people?
My advice to people. Yeah. My advice is, really it's why suffer? You don't have to work through this stuff. It's really, you don't have to go through therapy if you want to get something in your life, if you're stuck, if you're in a place where you just don't know what's next, find someone to help, whether it's a coach, a friend, reach out and yeah,
mentor and share. Don't just
share. Right.
Keep quiet and suffer, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I will be so it was been a pleasure having you on my podcast today.
Likewise. It was really awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Until the next episode, everybody, stay blessed. Wishing you grace, peace, and balance. Talk soon.